Hello and welcome everyone to the one-on-one webinar, Why MSPs Mandate Standards. I am Chuck Minguez, SDR here at One-to-One, and I am joined today with by One-to-One's subject matter expert, Billy Sprankle. Billy, thank you again for being here today. And would you mind just starting us off, telling us a little bit about yourself and your role here at One-to-One?
Sure. Yeah. My name is Billy Sprankle. As Chuck said, I am the subject matter expert here at One-to-One currently. I've been with the organization going on 9 years now. And really my role currently, I help with technical escalations, thinking about things in different light from different points of view, asking questions to help our team think about things that as resolving problems, whatnot. But then on the other hand, I'm working very closely with account management and of course our sales department in developing new products and services, helping with account reviews, going out and really educating with our internal staff and our customers on our products, our services, and how One-to-One can help move their business forward.
Perfect. Yeah, all around Renaissance man.
That's right.
Yeah, and that ties in nicely to today's topic. So the topic today, again, why MSPs mandate standards, and the objective of the webinar is to really equip the people who are going to be tuning in to get a comprehensive understanding of the critical role that MSPs play in setting and maintaining IT standards, and how to explore those standards in a way that they can effectively enhance a company's security and compliance issues. And the goal really is that we hope people come away with some best practices and gain some knowledge around how to effectively collaborate with MSPs to enhance their business outcomes. So yeah, with that said, wanted to dive into some very basic 101 type of things about MSPs. Could you explain to people, Billy, what an MSP actually is and what their role is in modern business today?
Sure. So an MSP, the acronym at the base level stands for Managed Service Provider. At the root level of what an MSP does, a lot of times it's viewed as a third-party consultant, someone who's handling IT needs for an organization, whether that organization is not quite large enough to hire their own IT staff, or they've determined that it's not really in their best interest to hire their own IT staff. So an MSP comes along and we're able to provide that expertise of IT, provide guidance, assistance, and really take on that IT role if it's not 100% outsourced to us, to be able to work with an on-site team to fulfill a role. So an MSP in today's world, we can really take on a lot of different facets, whether it's, like I said, all of the IT structure, and we're their help desk, we're their security, we're their monitoring, we're going to take care of the tools, we're going to take care of the patching, we're going to take care of pretty much everything from the day-to-day from an IT perspective, even rolling out new computers or new users, terminating users. We a lot of times those roles fall upon somebody in-house. And if your organization does have somebody in-house that handles some of that, typically they're a little overwhelmed. Or there's certain areas of the role that it just really doesn't appeal to them, whether it's patching or monitoring, alerting, ensuring that the tools are up to date. A lot of times they're fighting day-to-day fires where it's Sally from HR is having a problem, and somebody in accounting and all over the companies come to them for their problems, and they can't handle the day-to-day maintenances. So that's right. Another area that an MSP can really step into and support.
Yeah, that's actually, that ties in very nicely to the second part of this question. Is so the way you're explaining is like at One-to-One, we're an MSP obviously, and we do managed and co-managed services. Could you dive a little bit deeper into what that path might look like for somebody who's thinking about going fully managed versus a co-managed, and how the services might look a little bit different for each of those paths?
So You know, the from the co-managed perspective, if we start there, we can pick and choose certain aspects of our services that would benefit or relieve a pain point, whether it's they're leaning on us for monitoring, for alerting, for patching of the computer systems to make sure that that all is taken care of, all the way up through whether we're doing moves, adds, and changes at, let's say, a networking only level, and they're handling the on-site co-managed people are handling servers and workstations and the day-to-day help desk stuff. The nice thing about the co-managed is even though we're not handling that day-to-day, the co-managed on-site person can elevate to us. They can call us and say, hey, I'm having a problem, or I'm really overwhelmed today. Could you handle X, X, and X? And we could definitely step into that role because we have some accesses to the network. We have some fundamental knowledge that we can then support. Where on the other side, where we're everything to an organization, we're going to be the ones to receive all of those help desk calls. We're going to also deploy patching, monitoring, alerting. We're going to supply security services. We're going to monitor all those security services. We're going to make sure everybody is up to speed on the security stack and it's from a support perspective to ensure that their team is safe and secure when it comes to the IT infrastructure. And then we can take that one step further, and we'll do this for both co-managed and fully managed customers, where we'll actually become hopefully we become a trusted advisor. So not only are we dealing with the day-to-day aspects of whatever role we're being asked to or we're fitting into with that co-managed or in a fully managed environment, we're also going to help with the direction of the organization. So, all right, well, the company wants to add two new locations in the next 6 months. All right, well, let's start thinking about what that looks like as far as integration, as far as what equipment we need. Let's talk about budget. Let's talk about deployment timeframes. Who do we need to work with? You know, and then we work with other vendors. We work with construction companies or whoever is needed to ensure that deployment is accurate.
Very nice. Yeah, and so would it be safe to say then, regardless of whether a client decides to go fully managed or co-managed, that they would still have communication coming, they'll be in touch with somebody at the MSP or at one-to-one. There's always going to be somebody there kind of helping them out in some capacity.
You're 100% correct, Chuck. There should always be a level of communication because we're not just talking about buying a specific product or off the shelf, like you're going to Walmart to buy Kool-Aid. It's
Right.
more along the lines of let's talk about what kind of flavor Kool-Aid you need. All right, how much do you need? Let's talk about what this looks like. Let's make a plan around it. Let's figure out what the organization requires and build options off of that requirement.
Very nice. That's great. So yeah, thank you, Billy. I wanted to shift a little bit too about talking about the importance of standards, really, and why standards are crucial for MSPs. Why is it important for an MSP to set standards? Yeah.
So even if you don't think about it, every organization has standards. So even in a co-managed scenario or where you have your own full site IT staff, you're still sticking with a set kind of vendor. You're setting with set kind of products so that everybody is similar in their deployment, that the infrastructure is similar, that you're not dealing with multi-vendor communication aspects. So from an MSP perspective, we take that just a step further. So we actually say from a standard perspective, one, we can ensure that all of our team is trained on that standard. So we can help troubleshoot and resolve problems faster than if we're jumping from vendor A to vendor B to vendor C to vendor D, depending on what client we're dealing with. And then we might only have one person trained in vendor D, but we have 10 people trained in vendor A. So it really allows for consistency of deployment of our services and ensure that our clients are getting the best support from our team.
Yeah, that's fantastic because that actually goes into what I wanted to ask you next about how those standards impact the services that MSPs provide and services that we can provide. And you touched on it there, but if you can dive a little bit deeper on that, that would be fantastic.
Yes. So taking a little bit further than just from the support perspective, yeah, support's great. Having our team trained on the same products and services is awesome, but it also allows us to build a better relationship with vendors. So if we're not just buying one firewall from vendor A, but we're buying 30 firewalls from vendor A, we can then build a better relationship with the vendor, and we can get support from the vendor faster. We can get potential perks for ourselves and for the customers, to help not only with marketing events, but also to invite our customers to our facility to provide different levels of swag, so, and also hopefully reduce the overall cost. So we should be able to lower the total cost of ownership if we have a standardization of a vendor.
Very nice. And can you provide some examples of some of the key standards that an MSP should adhere to?
Sure. So several of the key items are typically around workstations or servers. So settling with a single vendor. There's a couple of key vendors out there. You might run into HP, Lenovo, or IBM. You could also see Dell. So again, if you can standardize on one of those vendors, you can build that relationship not only with the vendor, but our internal staff to understand how to troubleshoot and fix the issues faster. Other areas outside of like workstation servers, that kind of fun stuff, could be firewalls. If the firewall is very consistent, we can make sure that they're set up in a uniform manner. And like firewalls talk together a lot better than unlike firewalls.
Very nice, yeah.
So if you ever want to expand a location, having the same firewall at multiple locations is key. The same model, so from the same vendor.
Sure.
And then also, with wireless, in a facility, you want to make sure all your wireless is the same. So again, it comes back to making sure that they're compatible, making sure that they're going to work well together, and pairing up a standard of wireless access points to the switching environment to the firewalls, and making sure all those communicate and give you the best performance possible. Because if one of those pieces are not really vetted, or you're putting something in as in not utilizing a vendor that you're standardized on, that could give you interesting results.
Okay, good to know. Yeah. So, we talked about the standards, we talked about the importance of them, what an MSP is and what they do. Can you dive a little bit more into how one-to-one specifically implements and maintains those standards? I mean, you touched on that a little bit, but could you dive a little bit more into that?
Well, it really starts at evaluating multiple vendors. When we're looking at a new vendor, we're looking at a new product, or a new technology that's coming out, we're going to look at multiple vendors. And typically we look anywhere from 3 to 5 different vendors that are providing that same service. And we'll evaluate them, compare them apples to apples, see how they all stack up against each other, and then really start looking at the functionality, the speed, the performance of those boxes when you're comparing them to each other. And then we start to look how they integrate. So how does this box or this device integrate with something else, and making sure that that works well, or are we going to be able to get alerting from it? Are we going to be able to get easily remote access and monitor and fix it? And how quick does the support work? That's one thing that a lot of people don't always think about, is they might get a really cheap firewall, but your support is only available for 2 hours a day, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Great point. Right. Yeah.
So understanding all the different aspects. So we really typically look at, when we're evaluating any product or service to come up with a standard, again, we're comparing anywhere from 3 to 5 different vendors, and we're comparing everything, not only from cost, but performance, functionality. Does it give what we need to get? And then what kind of support are we going to deal with? A lot of times we're not going to necessarily go with the lowest price, because price is a factor, but it's not the factor. Typically, we want to make sure that our clients, that our standards meet the highest performance available.
Right. So when you talk about these different standards and the partnerships with different vendors, are there any potential challenges that come up within that process? And then if
there's always challenges.
And how do we overcome that as an MSP?
Yeah, so from an MSP perspective, when we're dealing with a lot of different clients, customers that are coming to us, they already have existing hardware on site typically. So when we come in, and a lot of customers are afraid that we're going to come in and we're going to say, well, we have a set of standards and we're going to make you spend X number of dollars right out of the box just to get on our standard, but they already spent all this money on the existing equipment. Well, we're not going to typically come in and say, hey, you got to get rid of everything. We got to
Right.
start over. It's more along the lines of, hey, let's look at the life cycle of that equipment. Let's put into play a budget and determine when we start talking about replacing that equipment to get you onto a standard, so that one, we can support you better, and that we can ensure that you're supported in the highest level possible.
Very nice. Can you share, and maybe without saying any names, but could you share some success stories where specifically with one-to-one, with us sticking to our standards, how that has benefited a client?
A lot of times it's really the idea of making sure that equipment works well together. We've been in some scenarios where you're dealing with one vendor of access point, one vendor of switching, one vendor of firewall, and they're not really designed to talk to each other. And then whenever we would come in and we set up a standard, not only do we typically see a performance increase, especially when it comes to networking, to the wireless and switching, we could also see a performance increase with end user computers connecting to servers, because now we can ensure that that pipe and that connectivity is built in the most optimal way. It also, a big success story really revolves around the idea of support. So if there's a problem on this network, and we've had this plethora of times, you're not dealing with, you call one vendor for this problem and you're working through them to troubleshoot it, and it doesn't matter if it's a switch or the access point, they're going to take care of it. Where the other side, it's not our issue, it's the AP,
it belongs to
vendor.
XYZ.
It's not our issue,
Yeah.
it's the switch vendor. So there's a lot, unfortunately, vendors don't always play nice together, and it's our job to really kind of bridge that gap and try to narrow it down so we know which vendor to talk to if we're put in that situation. But really, a biggest goal in success is ensuring that we can ensure as much uptime as possible for our customers, and hopefully get the most amount of performance out of the environment.
Really good. That's great. Yeah, and that too, I wanted to talk a little bit about how this impacts and affects clients and businesses. We create these standards, MSPs create these standards. How does that benefit a client?
It really benefits them, like I've been saying, on the support aspect. How long does it take to get an issue resolved? A lot of times, if it's something unfamiliar to people, or it's a no-name vendor, we've seen that in the past. There's oddities about those products and services that just take for a long time to get to the root of. And within the standards, our goal is to not only respond to our customers very quickly, but resolve the problems as quick as possible. So when we're really trying to balance that relationship and understand the speed to resolve the issues, and also build out what it takes from a cost perspective. We're not necessarily, like I did mention earlier, that our standards typically aren't the lowest price point. We're not always looking at the price as the key factor, but when we're talking about a bigger picture, we could typically reduce the total cost of ownership. And total cost of ownership goes into not just the products and services, but also how long does it take to install it? What kind of ongoing support do you need? Are you calling the vendor every day because of this inexpensive unit that was purchased? It will do the job, but it's not necessarily up to the same standards as what we would have chosen right out of the box. And that's where a lot of organizations and people don't really think about it. And when you're talking about on-site IT, you have a person there, or you have people there that are able to address those on a more regular basis. They have a little bit more free time to in and out, where from an MSP perspective, we're dealing with not just one network, but many networks. So a lot of times we're jumping from one to another, and not always have the time to chase this rabbit down the hole from a vendor that's not even giving us support, or a product that's really not living up to what it should be doing.
Sure. So kind of touching back to the managed co-managed scenarios, the one-to-one MSP standards, would they be the same for if a client chose the fully managed versus co-managed? Would they have the same standards, same level of service?
We do. We have different levels of standards depending on the requirement. So if we're talking about, I'll use switching for an example. If we're talking about a need for high level, high performance server communication between lots of different servers, we're going to recommend a higher standard of a product to ensure that we get that performance in there. Where if it's just we're talking about in between user computers, general internet access, we're going to be able to go with a different product. So we're able to actually balance that on what the needs of the situation is. It's not always a one solution fits all picture,
Right.
whether it's managed, fully managed, or co-managed. We're going to be able to really advise based on what the situation is, because co-managed scenarios typically are dealing with a bit of a bigger organization, bigger structure. So they're going to have different needs typically than a smaller organization or an SMB. So, but that's really where we come in and we have conversations. We talk to the clients and we understand what their needs are. So then we can come back and say, hey, based on your needs, here's what we would recommend based on our standards.
Right. Yeah, I love that. It always comes back to that communication piece where you're always going to have contact with somebody who's got your back, really, and going to walk you through what's going to be the best scenario for you, your business goals, and your tech goals. So as we kind of come to the end of this, and thank you again, Billy, I wanted to touch on what kind of the future looks like for MSP standards before we wrap things up. How do you see those standards and roles for MSPs evolving over time? Any big changes do you think that would roll out, or depending on what's happening with the tech and cyber, all that fun stuff?
Hopefully as an MSP, when we look at these different vendors and we work towards choosing a standard, one, we're constantly reevaluating that. So every year, every 2 years, we might be looking at that vendor and saying, hey, are you still where you need to be? Are you still providing the quality of product and service that we need, that we've come to expect from this arena? Or do we need to start looking at other vendors, that have come into the market or have really shifted their stance? So really, when we were talking about what the future holds, it really depends on making sure that the vendors that you're working with are continuing to advance. We in the wireless arena, we've been dealing with older wireless using WAP or the goodness gracious, it just left my head what the speeds are, but it's up to about 650 megabits a second, and now we've come out with Wi-Fi 6. And that's been out for a couple of years now, and we're recommending that as a standard currently. But Wi-Fi 7 just hit the industry in the enterprise arena. So, we're probably not going to be recommending Wi-Fi 7 today or tomorrow even, but towards the end of the year, we're going to be definitely watching that market. We're going to be watching those devices to make sure that the vendor we're working with now in the access point arena is going to maintain and provide a quality product when they move into Wi-Fi 7.
Very nice.
And if they're not, we're going to look for a vendor that can not only handle our current demand and current performance standards, our expectation around our current vendors, but also can handle moving into the near future.
Very nice. Yeah, that's very exciting. Great. Yeah. So that was my last question for you, Billy. I really appreciate your time. I hope that people tuning in or when they rewatch the recording of this, they get a better understanding of the standards that MSPs play in the business world and how they can benefit their day-to-day functions in their businesses. I want to encourage everyone to definitely check out one-to-one.com and the blog. We have some really great articles there about the standards, some of the core processes that we work with, what it's like to work and outsource your IT. Billy, do you want to throw out any places where people can find you or connect with you? Or
The best place to find me is on LinkedIn. I do maintain a presence up there, and yeah, I'm happy to answer questions and field some information if you have any questions about what standards are, or what one-to-one is utilizing for and what reasons. I'm happy to engage in those conversations. Like I said, you can always reach out to me on LinkedIn, but you could also filter any questions you have through Chuck, and he'll make sure that we get a conversation going.
perfect. Yeah, I'll make sure to include some links so people can connect with us on LinkedIn. And again, Billy, thank you so much for your time. These are always really enjoyable, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
Me too. Thank you very much.